From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South. I am Doris Polo. We start in Bolivia, where President and candidate for re-election Evo Morales has said he has evidence of a coup being prepared in the event that he is re-elected on October 20th.
I have recordings, some of the so-called civic committees of Cochabamba and La Paz, with some former military officers and some of the members of Santa Cruz Civic Committee. I have read the recordings. They want to burn the great house of the people and plan to prepare a coup if Evo wins. By the time the observers sent by the Organization of American States arrive from Europe, we will be able to provide all the corresponding information. So it is clear how the right wing conspires against democracy, how the right wing conspires against the Bolivian people. That is why I'm explaining what happened during those days in Potosi. It's the kind of paramilitarism seen in the previous era of dictatorship.
Bolivia is set to head to the polls on Sunday, October 20th, with political campaigns coming to an end on Wednesday. Our correspondent in La Paz, Freddy Morales, reports.
Things are proceeding as normal as Bolivia enters the final stretch before coming elections. Electoral campaigns will finish on Wednesday the 16th, as electoral silence will begin, so that the electorate can reflect on the decision they will take on Sunday, October 20th. There are 9 candidates participating. Of those, 8 are opposition candidates, as they were unable to present a unified candidate. However, the opposition are still pushing for unity with the aim of finishing in second place and have a runoff vote. Until now, President Evo Morales is in first place according to a diverse number of polls. He has an advantage of 10% or more ahead of former President Carlos Mesa. If that is reflected in the ballot boxes, he will win in the first round of voting.
That was our correspondent Freddy Morales with that report. Mexico's Foreign Affairs Ministry has said its embassy in Quito has offered to protect and shelter 6 Ecuadorian citizens, including legislators. A statement by the ministry named the individuals as Luis Fernando Molina, National Alternate Assemblyman Soledad Buendia, National Assemblywoman Carlos Viteri, National Assemblyman Tania Pauca, and Leonidas Anibal Moreno Ordóñez, trustee of the Pichincha Prefecture. The 6 join prominent opposition legislator and leader of the Citizens Revolution Party, Gabriela Rivadeneira, who on Saturday took refuge in the embassy due to threats against her by the Ecuadorian government, which has launched a crackdown on opposition politicians, which included the arrest of the prefect of Pichincha province, Paula Pabon. Now, this crackdown started on the same day that President Lenin Moreno finally repealed Decree 883. The government published an executive order signed by President Lenin Moreno indicating that the law would cease to be effective at midnight on Monday. Decree 883 sparked massive popular protests across Ecuador for nearly 2 weeks as it removed state subsidies for regular fuel and diesel. The president of the Confederation of Indigenous Nationalities of Ecuador, Jaime Vargas, said that after 12 days of struggle, the indigenous and other protesters liberated the country.
Together with our peoples, together in struggle, we have achieved the repeal of Decree 883. They have confirmed to me that this afternoon, or from tomorrow at the latest, all the prices of gasoline and diesel must return to normal. And the same goes for bus fares and the prices of basic products. Everything has to go back to normal. This struggle is not just for the indigenous people, but for all the Ecuadorian people.
Vargas also repeated the movement's demand that the ministers responsible for the last week of repression must be sacked. According to CONAIE, 10 people were killed by the police during the protests, hundreds were injured, and over 1,000 arrested.
The only thing we have done is fight for our country. And we have said that Maria Paula Romo, the Minister of the Interior, must go. And the Minister of Defense, Osvaldo Jarrín, must also be sent home.
The leader of the British Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn, praised the Ecuadorian people for their victory against the IMF and austerity measures to rapturous applause while speaking at a rally in South London.
It's that whole idea that somehow or other you go into the future making one generation poorer than the next, and all the time the world's riches has never been greater. It's not right. It has to be challenged, and that is what's so exciting about the movements in the United States, the movements across Europe, and the movements that are taking place in many parts of the world to challenge those whole ideas. And while we're on with it, let's give a shout out to those people in Ecuador that are standing up against what the IMF are doing to their economy and their people.
Meanwhile, in the United States, presidential hopeful Bernie Sanders tweeted to express his support for the Ecuadorian people after their historic victory. He said, "I applaud Ecuador's indigenous-led grassroots movements who stood up to repression and blocked the IMF's austerity agenda." In Guatemala, authorities have warned of an increase in rainfall over the next few days. The alert was announced on Monday by the National Coordinator for Disaster Reduction, which called on the population to be attentive to the increase of rainfall across almost the entire national territory. Authorities have asked citizens to avoid rivers and go to nearby Conrad shelters if their homes show structural damage. The director of the National Institute of Seismology, Juan Pablo Oliva, has also warned that heavy rainfall is expected in the southern coastal region, Boca Costa and Petén. Thousands took to the streets in the Brazilian city of Sao Paulo to demand the immediate release of former President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. More in this report.
On Sunday, thousands of people came to Avenida Paulista in São Paulo to demand the immediate release of former President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, who was convicted in 2018 with no evidence by a corrupted judiciary in order to remove him from the presidential elections.
I came here to defend Brazil's sovereignty and freedom for Lula, and to defend our future. We are suffering damages because of this. We have to work to eliminate all of the setbacks that are taking place in our country. Free Lula.
Leaked social media conversations between former judge and current Justice Minister Sergio Moro and prosecutors published by The Intercept show that they illegally colluded with 3 Supreme Court ministers to falsely accuse the former president of corruption to open the door for far-right candidate Jair Bolsonaro to take the presidency.
Sergio Moro should be held responsible and jailed because he committed a coup against Brazilian democracy and the justice system, and like prosecutor Delton Dayanol should be held responsible for this. We demand that Lula is immediately released.
Despite the fact that The Intercept and its media partner companies began publishing the leaked conversations months ago, Lula remains in jail. Sunday's protest was a sign of growing frustration with the Brazilian judiciary.
We came here from Mogi das Cruzes to support Lula's release and protest the injustice that was committed against him. We are fighting. We are dialoguing with the population in our city to explain what has happened to Lula. Lula is political prisoner and we are fighting for him. Free Lula.
Brian Mir, Telesur, São Paulo.
Coming up, it's set. Dominica's general election will be held in just over 3 months. Don't go anywhere.
Para mantenerme saludable, yo corro.
To keep myself healthy, I study.
Για να διατηρηθώ υγιής, τρέφομαι σωστά.
Para mantenerme saludable, yo bailo.
Para mantenerme saludable, yo purifico mi espíritu a través del cuerpo. ¿Y tú?
Get Your Body. Tuesdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. The Prime Minister of Dominica, Roosevelt Skerrit, has announced that general elections will be held in the country within 100 days.
Listen up very carefully. Listen up very carefully. So I will say tonight, and I certainly could not have said this 2 weeks ago, that general elections in the Commonwealth of Dominica will be held within the next 100 days, ladies and gentlemen. So you can do your maths. Get your calendars out and check within 100 days for elections in Dominica.
The Prime Minister went on to highlight progress made under his Labour Party government, as well as development plans for the future.
Labour has brought significant development to the southeast of this country, and we have plans and the resources to take such development further. We have a major road network program to unfold in these eastern communities over the course of the next 36 months. I am like Kent Edwards. I am not a talker, I am a doer. If I tell you that I have the wherewithal to bring true development to the East in the next 5 years, trust me that I know what I am saying and that I am sincere in what I say. By the same token, when the other side is finished with the cursing of Roosevelt Skerrit, beg them to unfold a credible plan for rebuilding Dominica. Beg them to say who their international friends and allies are and who they would be should they win the next election. You do not wait until you have won to forge allies and alliances. Voters should have a pretty good idea with whom you are planning to get into bed.
Haiti is facing a 5th week of protests after opposition leaders refused to back down on their call for President Jovenel Moise to resign. Roadblocks went up across the country as demonstrations continue. This follows Sunday's massive march led by the arts community, where some of Haiti's popular musicians and DJs called for Moise to get out. Moise's 32 months in office have been saddled with corruption allegations, soaring prices and fuel shortages, and a 22.6% inflation rate as of this month.
I see that artists are out on the street because they have seen that Haiti is not going forward. They are calling for food, for health, for electricity for those who live on the margins. Those in Cité Soleil, La Saline, Carrefour Fayol, those of us in Bus 47 are with them. We are ready to step things up, to go to Jovenel and say that he has to go.
Tunisia's Electoral Commission has officially declared law professor Kais Saied as winner of Sunday's presidential runoff election. According to the Electoral Commission, Saied received 73% of the votes against the 27% taken by his opponent, media mogul Nabil Karoui. The commission said 55% of eligible voters took part in Sunday's polls, a significant increase on the 49% turnout recorded during the first round held in September.
The number of votes declared for each candidate is Kais bin El-Munsef bin Mohammed Said had 2,777,931 votes with a rate of 72.71%. Nabil bin Rashid Karoui 1,042,894 votes with a rate of 27.29%.
At least 4 demonstrators have been killed in the Guinean capital Conakry during protests called to oppose a possible change to the constitution that could allow President Alpha Condé to run for a third term. Police also opened fire on protesters in the city of Mamou, an opposition stronghold. This, as authorities said, a gendarme had been killed during the unrest on Monday. Residents reported disruptions in several of the cities in the country, with schools sending pupils home. Interior Minister Bouré Makonde said the protests were marked by acts that threaten the lives of our citizens. He added that several people have been arrested and that the situation is under control.
We are not in favor of amending the Constitution. That is why we are here. Our objective is to ensure that Alpha Condé does not remain in power for long, because if he changes the Constitution, if he holds a referendum, it means that he will remain in power for a long time.
With less than 10 days to go before crucial presidential elections, Botswana's former president Ian Khama has thrown his weight behind the opposition Botswana Patriotic Front. The move is widely seen as a sign of deepening rift between Khama and his hand-picked successor and leader of the ruling party, Mogwetsi Masisi. In May, Khama defected from the ruling Botswana Democratic Party, or BDP, due to what he called the immature and arrogant attitude of his successor. Botswana will hold presidential elections on October 23rd.
Around 2010.
Health authorities in the Democratic Republic of Congo will roll out a new Ebola vaccine next month. Head of the National Anti-Ebola Task Force, Dr. Jean-Jacques Muyembe, said the new vaccine manufactured by Johnson & Johnson will first be rolled out in the North Kivu province and later expanded to the South Kivu and Ituri provinces. The DRC is struggling to contain the Ebola outbreak, which has so far claimed more than 2,000 lives since August last year. Police have rescued nearly 70 men and boys in northern Nigeria from a second purported Islamic school where they were shackled and subjected to inhuman and degrading treatments. The raid was conducted in Katsina, the home state of President Muhammadu Buhari. This comes less than a month after about 300 men and boys were freed from another supposed Islamic school in neighboring Kaduna State, where they were allegedly tortured and sexually abused. Police have so far arrested one man for running what they called an illegal detention home.
I was tortured every day to the point of fainting 3 times, look at my mouth and broken gums.
Beating, abusing, and punishment. This is what they always did to us here. They make a cover story and say they were teaching us. They are not teaching us for the sake of God. Everything that we are doing is by force and punishment, not for the sake of God. Whoever tells you they are performing prayers here for the sake of God, they are lying.
We're taking one last break. When we come back, protests are taking place in Barcelona over the harsh sentencing against Catalan separatist leaders. Stay with us.
Enjoy the best content in spaces where you will discover new perspectives, innovation, well-being, conservation, equity, traditions. A wide variety of contents that you will find on Telesur, the news source of Latin America and the Caribbean.
Thousands of people have been protesting in Barcelona after learning of the sentence handed down to 12 Catalan independence leaders. Students suspended classes and various groups are expected to join different mobilizations throughout the city. Spain's Supreme Court sentenced 9 Catalan separatist leaders to between 9 and 13 years for sedition over their role in an independence referendum in 2017. Catalonia's president has condemned the ruling.
The government and myself as president reject these sentences as unfair and undemocratic for being part of a political trial and a general cause against the right of self-determination of Catalonia and independent movements. Today more than ever, we are together with their families, because today more than ever, we feel fraternal solidarity with those condemned by the Supreme Court.
Following the Supreme Court ruling, thousands of pro-sovereignty protesters were violently repressed by riot police as they rallied at Barcelona's main airport, blocking roads leading there. The police charged at the crowd using batons and firing foam balls. Over 100 flights were cancelled and others delayed, and the high-speed train connection between Barcelona and France was also shut down. Our correspondent in Barcelona, Joan Ortiz, was with the protesters.
The center of Barcelona has been brought to a complete halt. Most of the roads here have been blocked by people joining the protests against these sentences, which add up to 100 years in prison for the 9 political prisoners who you will remember were convicted of sedition. But it is not only here. The entrances to the city are also blocked, and many other parts of Catalonia as well. That includes the airport, where protesters called for a blockade to cut it off. As a result, we have not been able to get there, and the police are also blocking access to the airport. But protests have been taking place there, and the police have made a number of arrests. At the same time as all this is happening, the European arrest warrant has been reactivated against Carlos Puigdemont, the former regional president of Catalonia. The judge accuses him of sedition and is demanding that the Belgian authorities detain him immediately.
That was Joan Ortiz with that report. Syria's government has stepped in to fight back Turkish forces and contain further attacks on the Kurds. The Syrian government has sent troops to the Turkish border to counter Ankara's offensive against the Kurds. This latest deployment is the first major dispatch of troops to Kurdish-controlled territory since Damascus started withdrawing from the northeast in 2012. Following the withdrawal of United States troops from Syria, Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces come under heavy bombardment over the weekend, with Turkey making gains in 2 key border towns. U.S. President Donald Trump has announced that he would impose additional economic sanctions on Turkey for its military operation in northeastern Syria. In a statement released on his Twitter account, Trump says the sanctions would be leveled against current and former Turkish officials, but he did not specify exactly when. He also announced plans to stop negotiations with Turkey on a $100 billion trade deal and to increase tariffs on Turkish steel to 50%. The chief executive of Hong Kong, Carrie Lam, has rejected comments by U.S. Senator Josh Hawley, alleging that the city has turned into a police state. Lam says Hawley's comments were irresponsible and unfounded.
First of all, I'm sure you know, one of the most important core values in Hong Kong is the rule of law. And one of the most important features underpinning the rule of law is an independent judiciary. So I will not interfere or comment on the arrangements in the judiciary to deal with a large number of cases arising from this incident. So that is my first reply. As far as individual U.S. senators coming to Hong Kong, meeting with a lot of people and making comments, I have to say that I thought their visit to Hong Kong will enable them to see the actual situation in a comprehensive and objective manner. But unfortunately, the feedback that I've got is most of them, or several of them, coming here, they have very preconceived views about Hong Kong's situation. And that's why for this particular senator to describe Hong Kong as becoming a police state is totally irresponsible and unfounded. The Hong Kong police force is a highly professional and civilized force. I would challenge every politician to ask themselves if the large extent of violence act and all those petrol bombs and arson and attacks, really deadly attacks on policemen happened in their own country, what would they do? What would their policemen do?
Mobile phone networks have been restored in Indian-administered Kashmir after a 72-day blackout. However, internet is still unavailable on both cell phone and fixed-line networks. India cut access to mobile networks in Kashmir in early August as it sent thousands of troops to the region, citing security concerns as it scrapped the region's semi-autonomous status and imposed a lockdown.
Without internet, mobile phones make no difference. Businesses are shut, educational institutions and schools are closed. I call on the government, if they want to restore the communication, to start internet connectivity as well.
And with that, we've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Doris Polo. Thank you for watching.